Hello everyone out there, welcome to Watch Complications. I'm Brian. I'm going to get straight to the point in this video because I have a lot to go through for watches. So one of my most popular videos has been my low cost watches series, where I began by comparing three low cost $20, $30 watches I got off Amazon. And that's proved pretty popular, so I thought, why not expand on that idea? What I have for you in this video is a low-cost watches chronograph edition. Super excited about it. Got 4 chronographs to talk to you about, all on Amazon. There will be links in the description below for each of the watches. I'm also going to throw in a link for the lights behind me. Once in a while I get asked about that setup and where I got the lights, so I'll throw those in as well below. So these low-cost chronographs that I've been looking at, which one am I wearing? The Timex Expedition, because it's the best one in the bunch. I'm not going to do the macro view in this, I don't really need to, but there will be plenty of pictures and loom shots and other things like that in the text version, which will be on watchcomplications.com, so be sure to check that link out below as well. Well, let's get straight to the watches and have some fun. So here are the 4 low-cost chronographs we're going to look at. The Timex TW4B 10200, the LIGE 6181 WM1, the curren 8292, and the nibosi NI 2309. You can go through that, pause it, and go slower if you want to pick up those numbers. I will say them again with each of the chronographs. We're going to look at the Timex first, then the curren, then the nibosi, and then the LIGE. I think the Timex is just low cost. It's certainly not a cheap watch, what I would classify as that. The LIGE is what I would say is the second best of this group. Again, it's low cost, a little bit cheap, particularly the bracelet would be a little bit better if it was on a strap of some sort or a higher quality bracelet. So, it's that borderline between my usage of low cost and cheap. Curren, I do like the strap, love the colorway, but the components and comprising the case with it being, plastic as opposed to metal, kind of cheap looking plating. I do like the dial, I like the colorway, the strap's comfy, but it certainly is a low cost / cheap watch. This is the one I would rank third of the bunch, and then at the end of the line is the very low cost. It was the lowest cost of all of these. It was $19, and it certainly is the cheapest. Arrived semi-broken, and the minute hand completely not working. Its quality in terms of the case and the bracelet is the lowest, even though it's got the best contrast and is, I think, the most legible of the bunch, at least in most light. Even though I think it's fairly legible, it's still just not a good watch. So these are in the order in which I would prefer them myself. Make the decisions for yourselves. I will also say that my intention is to keep the Timex Expedition. I'll probably actually replace the Weekender with this watch in my box. I actually like this one better. So I'll probably, give the Timex Weekender away in like a giveaway or something. I'm actually going to hang on to this. I'm going to trash the bracelet, but I'll probably tinker with and play around with the movement and the dial and stuff. And this might harvest some parts off of, like the hands or whatever, relume it with something good. So I'm going to keep this, probably hang on to it. $25, I'll harvest stuff off of it. These two are going back. So the Timex Expedition is a popular model, been around a long time, and they come up for, deals on Amazon every so often. There happened to be one on Amazon whenever I decided to do this low-cost chronograph edition, and this is specifically the TW4B 10200. I will put the link down in the description. Comes in the fairly standard Timex box, which has, the assembly information, usually Philippines, which is where Timex has most of that production. And so fairly standard box. People that are buying this are mostly not necessarily watch people and aren't as familiar with, let's say, the functionality or the operation of the watch. This is the chronograph, so there was this extra sticker on the reverse, on the case back here, to kind of just remind someone of the operation, start, stop, that sort of thing. Okay, so the Timex Expedition is very similar to a watch I have already reviewed and have in my low-cost series, the Timex Weekender chronograph. And these two watches have the same movement. You can see the wheels for the subdials are in the same place, the date, and it's the same watch in terms of the movement. Both of these have black coating. This one's fully brushed, sort of like a sandblasted or bead blasted look to it. This one's got a little bit more of a more typical brushing design on the exterior of the case around the bezel as well. But I like both of these watches. They're really good. They both have the Indiglo function. You push the crown in to turn the Indiglo on, and standard pusher functionality. But I really think I like the Expedition a little bit better. The Expedition, and this one in particular, has very much a pilot watch feel about it, whereas the Weekender has more of a field watch. I do wish the hands on this were black, but again, each of these has lots of different variants of in different models. So all different kinds of dial colors, hand combinations, case being black versus stainless steel. So there's lots of combinations out there of both of these models, and these just happen to be the two that I have. If I go down to just having one timex chronograph, I'm actually, in this case, I think because more of the color and contrast more than anything, I like this one. Even though I like the cleanness of the die, I think I like the Expedition a little bit better than the Weekender. All right, so let's pop in here and look fairly close, and we'll talk specs for this. Now, it usually retails around 80 bucks. I got it for $50 in an Amazon deal. This is a 42 millimeter diameter. It's a 51 lug to lug and just shy of 13 millimeters height. It's about, they advertise it at 12.5. I measured it about 12.8 in terms of the height. So really good dimensions, that 42, 12 sort of combination in terms of diameter and height. So comfortable on the wrist, fits good. It's a 20 millimeter strap and sort of a standard mineral crystal. Nothing fancy like sapphire. And on this canvas strap, this watch only weighs about 85 grams, so fairly light. Now the movement in this, they're gonna say, like on Amazon, they probably listed it as Japanese quartz, but timex, it's probably just a timex specific movement that's manufactured in the Philippines. And just keep in mind that this is plated brass, the case. Okay, so it's not stainless steel usually with these lower cost watches. It's gonna be some brass or brass-based alloy, and that will be plated. The plating on the timex watches is pretty good. I've not had any issues, for example, with my Weekender, which I've had for a while, in terms of the plating wearing off. So these are pretty sturdy and handle a lot of wear really well. Flip it over, we'll see the Expedition sort of motif on the back. We've got 100 meters of water resistance. So again, this has a little bit more water resistance than any of the others we're looking at today. So that's a big pro, is this actually has legit water resistance. You can get a little bit wet. You can see it's got the Timex website and model number information. What I also like about some of the Timex watches is they put the battery that goes in it on the outside of the case, so you don't have to go online looking up what battery to get when you need to replace it. So the main pros of this watch are the dimensions, kind of right in a nice sweet spot, the quality for the price. Timex has that down with this particular watch, the Expedition, and the water resistance, and it's comfy wear. Now the canvas strap, if you get one that's on this strap, it's going to be a little bit harder and stiff when you first get it, and it will feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it still feels nice when you put it on the wrist, even though if you like holding the strap and just interacting with it might feel like, well, that would be kind of rough to the skin. It actually feels pretty comfortable once you get it on the wrist, and then of course a little time and wear, and this will get softer. The design is also pretty great in terms of the colors and the contrast on this particular model. Big cons for this version of the Timex Expedition is the dial does look a little bit busy, I have to say that, and also the buckle on it is not very great. It's pretty cheap and flimsy. I don't know how long or how well that's going to hold up. You can see it's sort of almost like a sandblasted cheap metal. It's like a lot of Timex watches, the quality of the actual watch is going to far outweigh the quality of the strap or the buckle on those straps. It's got the Expedition logo there. Just not a super great looking comfortable buckle. It holds onto the canvas strap okay, but I would choose something different if I had the choice. Again, this has got the same movement in it as the Timex Weekender, and in the review of that watch, I go into detail about the operation of this specific movement. The operation is fairly straightforward. Whenever the crown is in its standard position, you can just push in and the Indiglo will turn on. It's light out, so you can't see it really turn on that well. It's kind of a blue glow, and so that's the Indiglo. Of course, you can pull this out to first position to set the date, and second position to set the time. To start the chronograph, you push the start at the top, and then whenever you want to stop, you can just push it again.
and you can see there it did a split second, so this is a split second dial. This is a 30-minute chronograph, so the second hand, which has this flyback design on this model, this is the second hand for the chronograph. This is a 1/10, so it's a split second. Then you've got the minute total, up to 30 minutes in the left subdial. This subdial down here is the small seconds for the main timekeeping of the watch. And then when you want to reset it, you can just push the lower pusher and you can see everything reset. You can change each of these subdials individually. So you can set the 30 minutes individually, and the tenths and the seconds hand can all be moved independently. You just pull the crown out to like first position, and then you can use the pushers to adjust certain hands, and then pull out to second position and adjust the other hands. So there's all different types of ways to get things centered or reset with this movement. And generally the other chronographs work the same way. So that's the Timex Expedition. It's a great watch, and I think in terms of this overview of these low-cost chronographs, this is the best of the bunch. So the box for the curren, just white all around for the sleeve. Pop it open. This leisure sports fashion watches curren. So pretty simple box. Inside you have the instructions manual, and then the head of the watch was wrapped up with the covering, you know, on the front, and then the plastic wrapping around, a little tag, and the crown guard. So pretty simple from a packaging perspective for the curren. The next three models are all sort of really low cost and also lower quality than the Timex. Let me pull in just as a hint for the next couple that the three that we're going to look at here, the one advantage they have over the Timex is that these all have 60 minute chronographs, whereas the Timex, Expedition, and Weekender only have 30. So if there is one advantage of these lower cost ones, it would be that these are all full hours and the Timexes are 30 minutes. This curren is the 8292 model. You can see it stamped there on the back. This is a pretty large watch, 47 millimeter and in diameter, and then 54.5 lug to lug, 13.9 height, so just about 14 millimeters high. They advertise it, at least in the spec on Amazon, as 12, so it's 2 millimeters taller than listed. It's 24 millimeter strap, so out of all the watches in the for today, this is the largest strap, 24 millimeter. Width between the lugs. I do like the strap though, mention that in a second. The crystal's mineral or probably hardlex. This weighs 85.5 grams, so it's a little bit lighter than the next two we'll look at because it's on leather as opposed to a bracelet, and really the leather is gonna do better with this sort of larger size anyway. And like the other couple watches we'll look at, this one is 30 meters of water resistance, so just very light splashing, but basically don't get it wet. The Timex can take a lot more water. So the main reason why I chose to take a closer look at this watch as opposed to some others is I actually like the colorway. It actually is copied, from what I can tell, from a Citizen watch that has a very similar design and colorway. But I thought, you know, it looked interesting. It is actually the last one in stock of this particular colorway. There's lots of different variants of this. And actually it kind of confused me when it shipped. The picture was different than what I had ordered, so I wasn't sure if the right one would arrive. It's just because that was the last one, so they replaced the image with something else. But I liked the blue, the red, and the sort of silver white dial. So the pros for me were the colorway and also the strap. The strap's pretty comfortable. It's 24 millimeter, you know, because of the 47 millimeter case size, it's big, so it requires a little bit of a bigger strap, at least the way they made these lugs. It's actually pretty comfortable to wear, and with a little bit of time would get even a little more comfortable. Probably won't hold up that well over time, but you know, you get what you pay for. See here, made in China, water resistant, 30 meters, so just barely resistant. It's got a unique design, and yeah, you know, in terms of the colorway, they've got two shades of red going on, though. They got this sort of brighter red. It's used here on the underneath the bezel, the crown, and then they've got this sort of darker shade where they're putting, with the small second here and the minute track here. This is a split second up here. That's 1/10 second. And then, yeah, it's just two different shades of red. I wish this red tone matched the brighter colors that are elsewhere on the dial and the case. As for those cons, 47 millimeters is just too big for me personally. Some people might like it. I don't. Quality is quite low in terms of the case materials and whatnot. The hand setting is very flaky. I'll show you that in just a second. The red parts here are not metal. These are just molded plastic rings. So fairly low quality, won't handle temperature fluctuations very well, I would imagine. Same thing with the little ring on the crown. So those are plastic, those are not metal. And what looks like loom in these locations is not. The only thing loomed here are the hands, which of course isn't a great loom. I'll have pictures of that on the blog post, but this looks like loom, but it's not. It's sort of like a fake loom look. So something to keep in mind as well. So the movement in this watch and the next two I'm going to show are by this company called Langexin, Langexin. Really, there's not much information out there on it. It's going to be, some Chinese manufacturer. The movement in this is the LD53. The movement in the other two is going to be the LD57. So I'm going to pull this out to first position, and clockwise will give me my quick set for the date. If I turn it counterclockwise, it doesn't do anything. Pull out to second position, and we can set the hands. And what I mean by flaky is there's a lot of give and such in the hands when you're setting it. So you can see it kind of flops around a little bit more than you would like a hand to do. Let's go the full way around. So you can see that it's kind of slow, actually. You can see it flip there. As we got close to midnight, flipped a little bit before. Fairly typical. I do like that the second hand there is tipped in red. All of the little hands are, actually. Again, color's a little bit off. Some look darker red. Some are a little bit lighter red. Okay, so the way that the chronograph works is start, stop, and reset. So we'll start it here. You can see this is a split second. It's going to be 2 seconds every full rotation. So every time it hits 0, we've got a second being counted down here. So this small second sort of location here is for the chronograph. The longer second hand that's ticking around is for the main timekeeping. A lot of chronographs, this second hand will be used for the chronograph, and there might be a small second for the main timekeeping. So yeah, full rotation of this is 2 seconds. It's what's known as tenths. And then we've got our minute count over here. You can see this goes up to an hour. So when I stop, all of the subdial hands are going to halt. And then if I want to reset, this will take me back to the starting point for all 3 dials. And they kind of work their way backwards. So you saw that the second hand went backwards. This actually goes backwards. So on and so forth. If you're doing longer timekeeping with these sort of chronographs, the split second will only work for the first minute, and then it stops. It's figuring, if you're timing more than a minute, then you probably don't care about split seconds, which would be true. So you'll see as soon as this gets to 60 seconds, a full minute, the split second will halt. You see we're almost to the 60, and there you can see you hit 60 seconds, first minute stopped, and you can see that the minute count here went up by 1. I'm going to stop this though, and the way I'll know it stopped is that the second hand down here stopped, and it still gave me the split second. It just doesn't show it rotating the whole time. So it's still working, technically. It's just not going through the energy draining activity of rotating the hand. Now, I'm not going to go through it on this video since I did it on the earlier timex weekender video, but you can interact with each of these subdials individually and sort of setting them individually if they get out of whack. Basically, you just pull the crown out to first or second position, depending on which subdial you're interacting with, and then use the pushers to individually move the hands. So you can look at the timex weekender video if you want to know how that works, but it works basically the same on all of them. So next up we have the nibosi. I'm not sure, but it is probably the worst of the bunch in my opinion. So it's got the sleeve around it. Here's, again, sort of that standard looking case. Instruction manual. This one did come with a cleaning cloth. There's the usual sort of, cheap card, that has the warranty information on the back, tag. And this one with the bracelet had, some of the extra protection around that. So that's the packaging. So as for the actual watch, the reason why I'm saying it's the worst of the bunch is it kind of looks the cheapest in terms of the design. I thought this would be a little bit more interesting in person than it is. One thing though, the minute hand has sort of fallen off of its pin location in the right way, so you can see it's tracked down. I can't actually set the time on this correctly. It won't operate correctly because the minute hand is not attached correctly. It's loose. Came that way, so I can't really interact with it in any sort of meaningful way. It gets stuck on the markers and hung up on the hour hand. You can see it's kind of funny. So yeah, I'm going to be returning this and not buying one of these again. They do put protection on the crown and the pushers. So just as a reminder, the timex was $50. The curren was $30. This one was $20. So the cheapest, and that's certainly true. It's 43 millimeters, so a little bit closer to the size I like. It's got a 50 lug to lug and 10.5 millimeter height, 22 millimeter bracelet strap width, 131 grams, so heavy on this, bracelet, much more so than on leather. 30 meters of water resistance again, so don't get this thing very wet. And again, mineral crystal / hardlex. The clasp on this is a little bit better than the next one we're going to look at in terms of its, smoothness of operation and whatnot. So we got a sort of butterfly clasp here and got the logo put on it. I guess I didn't show you on the curren. Remind you, it's got the logo as well on the buckle. You can see it says, quartz movement. This is the NI 2309. Water resistance noted there. And stainless steel, but it is a low quality steel that's used for this thing. Operation is just like the others in terms of time setting. First position is going to quick set the date. Second position, set the time, if it could do it with this one. And we got the 60-minute chronograph, split second at the top, second at the bottom, and minute at 9 o'clock. These pushers are better to interact with. So the pros in terms of this particular watch, the dimensions are sort of more appropriate for most people. Again, 43 millimeter diameter, 10.5 height. It is the most legible out of all of them. The timex is a little bit busy. The curren, there's more contrast here, and the red against the blue is a little bit hard to see. The white sort of helps, but this is certainly the most legible out of all of them. Having the larger date window and the white against the blue gives a nice contrast. Now, the cons, I think this one's the lowest quality out of all of them. Now, it was the cheapest at $19, but the bracelet is particularly bad. I'll show you pictures of this again on the blog post, but here, let me open this up so I can show you a little bit better. But it's not comfortable at all. Sharp edges all the way around. You can see the machining on the connections here at the lugs. Pretty rough, sharp edges, just not comfortable at all. Same goes for the edges of the links as they rub against your skin. See, it's sort of a contrast here between brushed and polished, which is nice, which gives it, sort of wants to give it that sort of higher end look. But again, the quality of finishing is never going to be there for watches in this range. But you know what? Again, I'm just giving you a look at these low-cost chronographs. This is originally $24, so we got a few bucks off. It's certainly not even worth that, probably, maybe $10. So yeah, the big cons, quality, not a big fan of the bracelet, not comfortable, lower quality still. The case back's gonna be some sort of lower quality steel. But hand setting is obviously an issue on this one. And I will say though, this is the one watch that had all of the information on Amazon in terms of the spec was accurately advertised. All of the others had some sort of aspect to it that isn't correct in the listing. So this is the Nibosi NI 2309, and do not recommend this particular watch. So both the Nibosi and this next one we're going to look at, LIGE, both have the Langixen LD57 movement. So not particularly sure what the big difference is between the 53, which is in the curren, and the 57 that's in the Nibosi and the LIGE, but they're slightly different movement. So the packaging for this one, oh, by the way, LIGE is actually an acronym, so it's not a word to be pronounced. And I'll show that to you in a second in the documentation. So here is, again, sort of a standard case. This one's a little bit nicer than the others, actually, though, in terms of the packaging. So LIGE, Legend, Immortality, Gorgeous, Extraordinary. Talk about embellished language. So that's the manual. This one came with good protection around the bracelet and whatnot, but it came with a couple other nice things. So this one came with a nicer cleaning cloth, and it actually came with a little tool to change out the links on the bracelet. Sometimes some of these lower cost watches do throw in nice tools. Some of them that I've reviewed before, for example, come with the spring bar tool. This one actually came with, a low cost, but still a tool for helping you resize the bracelet if you needed to, which is, a nice touch for something in this price range. You gotta take what you can for around $20, give or take. So let's look at this watch that will give you immortality. I actually like the design of this. It's trying to be sort of Daytona-ish with the design here of the crown and pushers. I like the red, black, and white contrast. This one has a little bit better logo. I like the screws around here. So I do like the design overall. It's fairly legible. This one was 28 bucks without the deal. It was $25 with the deal. A little bit larger again. This is 44 millimeter diameter, so bigger than I typically like. 44 is about as big as I would ever go. I do have a few watches that are that size that are actually good watches. They did keep the lug short, so even though it's 44 millimeter diameter, the lug to lug is a nice smaller 50 given the design. 22 millimeters, so nice standard size for the bracelet and strap. You can see I got a little damage there from, that's how it arrived. The crystal in this was specifically noted as hardlex, 160 grams on the bracelet, so this is the heaviest of the bunch. And as with the other previous two, 30 meters of water resistance, don't get it wet. So what do I find the pros to be about this particular watch? I do like the design. I like the hand shape and how they did the lume on those. I like that there's some depth to the dial. So the design, colors, depth, hands, particularly in terms of the design. I do like the bracelet being entirely brushed as opposed to the alternating between polished and brushed. If you're going to do this sort of thing, don't try to be all grand seiko about it with a low-cost watch. It's not going to work. But I do like it when it's all brushed. I do like that the chronograph seconds is a wheel as opposed to a hand. So it sets there at 60, and you can see then it starts counting up, 5, 6, 7, so on and so forth. Split second works the same way. After 60 seconds, it's going to stop, and we got the 60-minute dial over here. Stop that, and again, do a reset. So I do like that this is a wheel. That's kind of a nice little touch, that screw in the middle. This one has more lume than the others, so these are lumed markers, not fake ones like on the curren. The Nibosi just had the hands. So the timex has the best lume, obviously, but this is the second best in terms of how the thing is loomed. Of course, there's not any up here but 12, 1, 2, 3, but these are loomed. And the hand lume is all right too. And I do like the crown guard and pushers on this compared to the other two, the Nibosi and the curren. Timex, I think, is still the best out of these four in that department. But I do like these for this, steel pushers. I wish they were brushed as opposed to polished look though, to match the bracelet. The big cons on this one, much like the nibosi, well, first of all, this clasp is terrible. So it's one of these that first you got to pop this open, then you press this to open the clasp. Really, really cheap, really uncomfortable. Putting it back together is quite a bit of a pain. Doesn't want to close very easily. So I do not like that aspect of this one at all. The nibosi clasp is a lot better, a lot smoother action, works a lot better, and around the clasp is a lot more comfortable. So this bracelet is not comfortable at all. It has the same sort of problem. The machining, particularly around the lugs, very rough, sharp, not good, and sharp edges that will rub your skin the wrong way when you're wearing it. It's tight against your wrist. In terms of the model, this is the 6181 WM1. See it there, quartz, LIGE, for Dream. I love how they put these dates on here, like 1853, okay. The plating on this is going to be pretty weak as well. I would imagine this plating that's on the bezel is going to wear off relatively quickly, particularly if it takes a little scratch or something like that. So that's a con. Really, I do like that it's got more lume, but it's weak lume. And the legibility is okay. I really dislike the bezel. But you know what, 25 bucks or so. Could be worse, it could be worse. It's an okay look for, again, that $20 price range. In terms of the online specification, it was mixed info in terms of it being accurate or not. One other thing I will show you, which I thought was interesting, is this looks like a screw-on caseback would on like a diver style watch. Like you should put your case tool in there and unscrew it, but it's actually just a regular old snap-on caseback. You can see there is the slot to get, you know, a screwdriver or something in to pop the case back off. So they made it look like a screw-on case back, but it is just a regular snap-on case back. As is the case with all of these watches, the 4 we're looking at today, they are all snap-on case backs.
I don't think it's particularly crazy. I think it's pretty entertaining to just sometimes peruse Amazon, grab a few cheap watches and just take a look. You know they aren't going to be great, but you know you do get surprised every once in a while. Like Songdo was a big surprise for me, and I really like those watches. You've seen them in other videos and on the site. But after you've done it a few times, you know which ones are going to be better. Timex has always got a generally good product, and I like those for just, you know, general around the house, everyday wear, you know, yard work, chores, all that kind of fun stuff. So they make great watches, and they're really going to be the best of the bunch when you go low cost and you're in that 50 or less sort of range. Well, there's a lot more fun stuff coming up in the future. I've got some more strap reviews, plenty of watches, and making custom stuff. So keep on watching, subscribe if you haven't, ring the bell if you want updates, and keep commenting. This is Brian, out.